I began my sauce first on the stove. I'm using frozen Roma tomatoes that we froze in the summer, but you can use canned sauce. I'm going to post the recipe link below so you can see what I did, and I'll put some other options there. While the sauce was cooking, I formed my meatballs. These are venison meatballs, nothing fancy. It's got breadcrumbs, eggs, milk, seasonings, Parmesan cheese. Again, recipe will be in the link below. I felt I really wanted more sauce, so I blended more tomatoes and put them in the sauce. You can do whatever consistency you want if you're blending. I like a little bit of chunk, but whatever suits you. I found actually probably the more blended it was, it actually adhered more to the meatballs. So I just stirred in the extra tomatoes, didn't really adjust much, maybe some seasonings, but it turned out really good. Didn't have any tin can taste. So then I began to cut the cheese. I used half of this 400-gram block of cheese. I cut it in half to start with. Then I cut that half into quarters. Then I stacked those pieces, one on top of the other, and cut it lengthways. And then I cut across into thirds. So that gave me 24 pieces of cheese, about 1 inch square, and I did count the meatballs and I had it exactly 24. Didn't plan that, just worked out that way, which was quite surprising, to be honest. So once I got the cheese all cut, I began to stuff the meatballs. So initially I pressed them out pretty flat, put the cheese in the middle, rolled the meat up around it. That worked fine. The only thing I found is it kind of started sticking to the cutting mat, and I was afraid of tearing the meat and having cheese leak out, and it was more tedious. So I began just by taking the formed meatball in my hand and pressing an indent in the center and putting my cube of cheese in the middle of that and folding the meat around. It went quicker, it wasn't ripping on my cutting board, and I just feel like that's probably the way I would do it from now on, and that's what I'm recommending to you. So I just put it in my hand, place that indent, put the cheese in, and just rolled it around the cheese. And then when it was done, I rolled the whole thing in my hand just to kind of make it round and make sure the edges were sealed. So then they were ready, and I cooked them right in the sauce. I did not brown them first. I did not want a crust on them. I wanted that sauce to soak right in, and it worked out really well. So I put about half the sauce on the bottom and the other half over the top, and I put them in the single layer on the bottom, trying not to get them too close or squish them, but I did squeeze a few in on the bottom because I figured they're going to shrink as they cook anyway. So I was trying to get as many on the bottom as I could because I wasn't sure I had enough sauce to fill it if I put a second layer, but I ended up having to put the second layer on anyway. And luckily there was enough sauce. When I poured it on, it covered it just barely, but then again I was expecting some shrinkage, so I was hoping it was going to be okay. Scraped out the bottom of the pot, put the rest of it in. Don't like to waste. So I put the lid on. I cooked these on high for 3 hours. At the end of it, I checked. There was a little bit of leakage of the cheese, but it was very minimal. None of the meatballs were empty. I just stirred it up to rearrange things a bit. And then I wanted to make sure they were done, and so I got my meat thermometer, well, my digital thermometer, and checked the meatballs. I just checked right barely into the meatball because I wanted to make sure the meat was done. I knew the cheese would be hot, and yeah, it was definitely done. Checked a couple places just to be sure. So it was done. And then I sprinkled some grated marble cheese on top. You could use whatever, and some oregano. So at that point, because they were done, I put the lid on. I turned the crock pot off because I really like my food to sit anyway, but especially meat after it's cooked, and just give it a chance to absorb all the flavors. And this is how it turned out, and they were really good. I served it on cooked penne pasta with an Alfredo sauce and a side salad.